What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media. Sunday night football just ended. It unfortunately ended super late. Usually it ends around like 8:20, 8:30. So I know most of the viewers of this channel are East Coast people. So if you are up this late, thank you so much. But, if you're watching this after the fact, by no means is that a problem at all. I'll start off. I'll talk about some of the comments that we had in here earlier. I set up the stream just so people knew that we would be going live after the game. But Charles came in early, said once again, John Harbaugh single-handedly lost the game for the Ravens that we were leading in the fourth quarter. Just talking about Harbaugh, obviously you guys know I don't like Harbaugh. I call him brother at jam. I refuse to refer to him by his first name because I think he's not good. But to say that it was necessarily all on Harbaugh is, I think, disingenuous because there were other issues in this game. I think Lamar played well. I don't really recall him missing, a lot of throws or anything like that. He ended up 21 for 34. They took some shots. I didn't necessarily like the shots that were taken in the game, but I think they were designed, right? Like we had a Nelson Aguilar deep shot that we tried. I didn't love that. But Rashad Bateman drops the pass, hits him in both hands. It's a great play by the defender, but hits Bateman in the hands. Bateman loses control, ball pops up, gets intercepted. That comes after, a big Ravens turnover. So, that's a big game-changing momentum play that hurts, obviously, the stat sheet, which, in the end, stats don't matter necessarily that much. But, defensively, I still feel like we gotta tune some things up with Zachary Orr's defense. I feel like when you're going against a team like the Raiders, there needs to be a bigger focus on the number one receiver, right? Davante Adams is a clear top end, highest tier possible receiver in the NFL. He has been for years. But the Ravens just sat there and said, we're going to give you one-on-one all game long. And I don't understand that. I think that's, again, just poor coaching decisions. Last week, it was Malik Harrison in the slot a lot of the times on Rashee Rice. But this week, it was, we're going to play one-on-one man coverage against Davante Adams. And it wasn't working. And, we had some big plays on defense. The pass rush, I'll talk about that in a little bit, was fantastic. But putting whether it's Marlon Humphrey or Brandon Stevens, if Marlon Humphrey isn't in his prime anymore, he's clearly not as good as he once was. I still think he's good. I have no problems with him, but he's not the caliber of player he once was where you go, yeah, we'll throw him one-on-one, put him on an island and he'll clamp. Like, no, that's not who he is anymore. Davante Adams is one of the best receivers in the NFL. We got that pass interference call in the end zone on Brandon Stevens against Davante Adams, another one-on-one situation. I didn't love that call. There was hand fighting, so, they can make that call sometimes, I guess. Gene Steratore, I think, said that he was not a fan of the call. He felt like it was 50-50 hand fighting, and I would agree with that. I didn't love the call, but at the same time, with the way that the momentum of the game was going, I felt like that was going to be called. In positive notes, the pass rush, Odafe Oweh looked really good. Odafe Oweh looked great. Travis Jones was dominant. Nnamdi Madubuike, really good. Shout out to the refs for calling his sack as a face mask because that was ridiculous. But, as bad as that call was, David Ojabo, I believe it was, he ended up, because Gardner went down, Ojabo ended up jumping on him, so they probably would have thrown a flag for that, but they didn't throw a flag for that. So, it probably wouldn't have, happened, but whatever. Horrible call. The frustrating part is it takes away a sack for Madubuike, which, you never want to see. But offensively, in terms of the coaching and the play calling, again, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I did like what they ended up getting to, which was just getting Derrick Henry the ball in general. They weren't in a situation where they were behind, and so they were able to feed him, but they were feeding him in different ways, right? It wasn't just them telegraphing that they're running up the middle, right? They ran a couple of those pitch plays to him to get him in space. Lamar Jackson threw it to him as a check down in space. Like, those are the types of plays that I think we need to be getting Derrick Henry in. But, running to the left side was working very well. But I think one of the biggest issues in this entire game I'm going to see if anyone's commented it yet. Was I don't think I've seen anyone comment it yet. But Daniel Falele can't play. It's not even necessarily that he can't play guard. Like I don't see a world where you can go out there and start him. He's that bad. Um, in certain situations, is he good? Yes. I don't want to take that away from him. He's new to guard. I will give you that. But there's no way Ben Cleveland is worse. And maybe he is, but we've seen Ben Cleveland. It's not like Ben Cleveland's never gotten snaps in the NFL. Ben Cleveland, I believe, has allowed 1 sack in his career in around like 120 snaps. But in this game, it was Daniel Falele getting abused over and over again by multiple people. Particularly Max Crosby did a great job against him. But it was situations where he is too slow. He cannot react. He cannot get to his spot. And he is beaten off the line in run situations consistently. There are multiple times where Derrick Henry just gets laid out in the backfield because Falele doesn't block the 3 tech or 5 tech. One of them squirts in and Falele blocks no one. And then there was obviously the huge sack on Lamar Jackson late in the game where Max Crosby stunts on the outside, slips inside, and Falele cannot get there. And you're watching it and you're like, this guy clearly isn't quick enough to play on the offensive line. And they just went around and like they would just go around him. And Lamar Jackson does a fantastic job of avoiding pressure, but wasn't able to avoid that one. And that just kills drives when you're having situations like that. But like passing the ball, Zay's fantastic. I think Zay Flowers is I think he's a clear one for this Ravens offense, and you can have that. You can be successful. But outside of him, the inconsistencies are glaring. We see Rashad Bateman drop a pass and it turns into an interception. We see Nelson Aguilar, he gets hit with the deep ball. Defender makes a great play, but it's just one of those things where you have that, receiver that can do that, right? We don't have any sort of, one-on-one receivers. Now, Isaiah Likely can do it. Mark Andrews can do it. But, I wish Isaiah Likely came down with that pass at the end of regulation. But at the same time, like, you can't expect him to make that pass or make that reception. That was a great effort by him, great play by the defender. Looking at who caught passes, right? So Zay had 7 targets or 7 receptions, Mark Andrews 4. Mark looked better. Unfortunately, Mark stopped his route on that one. Lamar overthrew him. If Mark follows that through, that's more than most likely caught. Bateman 3 receptions, Likely 2 receptions. I love Likely. Hitting him in the flats, hitting him in space is definitely a recipe for success. He's making guys miss almost every single time he touches the ball. Henry 1 reception, Justice Hill 2 receptions. One of the things that's very frustrating is Monken's love for the Justice Hill screen. And I don't necessarily mind the Justice Hill screen, but I feel almost every single 3rd and long is a Justice Hill screen. The Ravens, if they're going to try and run these screen passes, they need to not telegraph when they are happening, right? Sure, you can run a screen pass every once in a while on 3rd and long, right? Because it's unlikely that you're going to pick it up by, just chucking a deep ball. Stylistically, schematically, screens, a popular play in those situations, but we do it almost every time. And then on 1st and 2nd down, even if it's Derrick Henry in or Justice Hill in, it just seems like everything is so telegraphed. And for a team that should be good, for a team that has the weapons to be good, right? You have 2 great pass catching tight ends. You have a fantastic wide receiver in Zay Flowers. You have a dominant running back in Derrick Henry. And obviously you have Lamar Jackson. The lack of creativity on early downs is frustrating because it's just like with Greg Roman, where you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, that's what I thought they were going to do. And then they do it. And, that's unfortunate when you're watching your favorite football team and every play you just sit there and you're like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. Also, Derrick Henry had the 2 false starts. He's got to clean that up, but there's just so many mental lapses that happen when you're watching this Ravens team. And that's it. That falls down to coaching. Lack of consistency, lack of awareness, lack of, just understanding what's going on is frustrating. Abraham, I don't know if that's Abraham or Abraham. I'll say Abraham. Harbaugh falls in love with such mediocre players / people: Justice Hill, Greg Roman, James Hurst, Steve Saunders, Patrick McCarry, Daniel Falele. I like Justice Hill. I'm actually not on a, Justice Hill hate train. I just think that Justice Hill needs to be, I think he needs to be used a little bit less often. Passing situations, obviously put him in. But I don't mind having Derrick Henry in on 3rd and 4, right? Justice Hill's coming in on like every 3rd and 4. And I'm like, okay, why can't Derrick Henry be in? Because you can pick that up with a rush. Not saying you should run it every time on 3rd and 4, but the Ravens just like lack of willingness. Even though he got the ball a ton, it felt like they were still like not really using Derrick Henry, especially in the first half. Second half, he got a lot of carries, but he only had like 5 rushing yards in the first half because they telegraph everything so much. Francisco says, sad to see when we have our best offensive weapon ever and lose. We used to hope for 21 points to win it, and now that's our default when we're bad and we still lose. Yeah, we go out there with a team that should win essentially every single game. But instead what they do is they go out there and they put up points. This is not a team that goes out there and puts up 9 points in a game. But instead what they do is they go out there and they put up 21 and then they crumble. They fall apart. Or they have lapses, they have turnovers, and all of a sudden their point total that you would expect, if you tell me like, hey, the Ravens scored 23 against the Raiders, I would think, yeah, they won. But instead they go out there and they, shit the bed essentially and fall apart. So, I think that when you're looking at this team and you're looking at the issues with Harbaugh, is they have to figure out a way to stop having these critical errors, because I think it's 5 to 10 critical errors a game, whether it's coaching, right? There were 2 challenges by John Harbaugh, brother Jim, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way he just threw a challenge flag, because it's so blatantly obvious that that it won't be overturned, and yet he still throws it. And they ask him about it after the game, and he's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of a gut call. Like, no. The first replay that was showed, yeah, Zay did not catch the ball. I was like, okay. Like, yeah, I wish he caught it, but I see why Zay thinks he caught it. He felt like he had possession, but like you watch the replay, you're like, yeah, it hit the ground. Harbaugh drops the challenge flag really late. It's not like he threw it right away, really late. And it's like, dude, that's our first challenge in the first half. Second half, I think it was Devontae Adams has a great toe drag catch. And I see it and I'm like, okay, that's a great catch. And then they show the replay and it's like, yep, he never lost control of the ball. It's one thing if, he goes to the ground, the ball flies out and you're like, okay, maybe he didn't contain it. No. Full possession the entire time. Both his feet very obviously down on the ground. This is a second half where you're in kind of a tight game. You have 3 timeouts. Maybe you need those timeouts. And I'm watching that and I'm like, hey, we might need those timeouts. He throws the challenge flag. I'm like, it's like a 14-yard reception, right? Like on like 1st and 10, if it's a 3rd down, a game-changing play, maybe, even though it's still obviously wrong. Like I could see the reasoning, but instead it's like, no, it was 1st and 10. You throw the challenge flag in a pivotal point in the game, you lose your challenge, And he just goes out there in the press conference. He's like, well, yeah, you're not going to go 100%. It's like, dude, you're going 0%, right? Like, he's so bad with challenges. He's always been bad with challenges. And he just kind of throws them on gut feel. Like, use challenges, but don't just waste timeouts in games where you need them against a team that you struggle against. The Ravens consistently struggle against the Raiders. But instead, John Harbaugh just chucks it. That's 2 mistakes right there, right? The false starts, the kickoff. Ravens do a kickoff and they have an illegal formation. Dude, Harbaugh, get your guys together. And Harbaugh's freaking out, being like, "What? That's not the case. That's not the case." Like, dude, the Ravens are getting called. I haven't watched every single game of every single team. I've watched most of the games. There's no way a team has more illegal formations than the Ravens. It's horrendous the way that they're doing this, right? Ronnie Stanley had like 3, in the first game, but they're getting them all over the place. Special teams and all these other things. Jordan Stout, yeah, DB. That punt was horrible. And then someone runs out of bounds to just add insult to injury. And you're just like, what are we doing? Then he calls that. This was probably the most frustrating thing for me. Brother at Jim calls a timeout with, I'll check the exact timeage in the game. Calls a timeout towards the end. It was the Raiders scoring drive. I believe they called a timeout. Yeah. 1st and 10, 2 minutes and 21 seconds left. Zamir White rushes to the Ravens 35, 2nd and 2. Brother at Jim calls a timeout there. Obviously, he's hoping that we get the stop. That's not when you call that timeout. You let the clock run down to the 2-minute warning because that's only burning 15 seconds, right? You want to use your timeouts to maximize the amount of time saved. And so by not waiting until after the 2-minute warning, and you only save 15 seconds, they go out there, they throw a pass to Jacoby Myers, complete, in the middle of the field. Time runs down to the 2-minute warning. Right? Imagine that in reverse. Imagine it gets to the 2-minute warning. It's 2nd and 2. They get their first down. Now you call a timeout. Guess what? There's 2 minutes left. Right? And now they're at 1st and 10. And you're not wasting all of this other time. And if you get the stop, then you can call a timeout. It just seems like he's just wasting all of these timeouts. And KJ, I know you know this, but I said last year before the season started, I wanted Brother at Jim gone for Mike McDonald because I felt like he was good enough. He was proven enough that he should be the head coach. He deserved a head coaching job. And unfortunately, we kept Brother of Jim, and we're just stuck with this guy that can't get it done. And he consistently, the teams he leads falls apart. I saw someone tweet out that I think it was since 2020, the Ravens have blown 20% of their double-digit fourth quarter leads. Or maybe it was second half leads. 20%. Harbaugh has the most double-digit blown leads in the NFL since at least 1991. He has 9. Harbaugh has had one team he's been a head coach for. He doesn't get criticized by the national media. He doesn't get criticized by the team internally. And the Ravens go out there and they just allow this to continue to happen to them. I've said this probably 5 times in the last year. But when are the Ravens going to make that change? Because they consistently expect a different result, right? Oh, now this next time we'll stick to our game plan, or maybe it's this next time we'll have we won't have these critical errors by our coaching staff. and they keep having the same problems for the last 4 years, 5 years, honestly, 10 years, really. But like the Ravens weren't in like a contending stage, 10 years ago, right? There was a period of like 5 years where it was like the Ravens just like weren't that good. Like they were okay. They'd make the playoffs every once in a while, but like nothing special. But under Harbaugh, it was just like what when are these issues going to be fixed? And it's just they're not. Under Harbaugh, they will not be fixed because they haven't been, and he's had 12 years since the retirement of Ray Lewis to do it. So, like, when's it going to be enough? And unfortunately, I've said this before. I don't think Eric DaCosta or you know anyone in the organization is going to push for it, even though they need to. It's a situation where they're living in comfort and mediocrity rather than taking a risk, swinging big, and trying to make a change because they're not making a change. They keep blowing leads, they keep having critical errors, and they keep not getting it done. So I don't really know what to like say at this point. Like it kind of sucks when like every post game stream that I do or like video. I didn't even make a video in the last week because I was just like, I'm done trying to make these videos and like just being angry and like just talking about how Harbaugh is messing everything up. I'm gonna try and make more videos this week, just talking about the positives. Talk about Rosengarten. I thought he had a really good game. Makari was the one in the first drive that was just getting obliterated, but Falele is not giving you any help. But let me know in the comment section down below. It's like 12:15 for a lot of you. So I'm probably gonna end the stream. Josh and I will get a recording in this week and we'll be able to have some episodes out talking about the game. But just wanted to get live, talk with you guys for a little bit. It's good to see you, Chaos and Cam and KJ and everything like that. But thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe for more, and I'll see all of you again this week. Hopefully with some more positive discussion.